It is an astonishingly simple recipe. 3 simple atoms, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen, combining to create the stuff of life. It is as basic a need as we have. It's water. And on and around this pleasant peninsula, it seems to be everywhere. Michiganders have long held it up as the state's greatest resource. Surely it must be in the Great Lakes state. And then came Flint, where deposits of lead fouled that simple recipe to a potentially deadly degree. What could go so wrong? Tonight, where it started, and more importantly, where it's headed. Failure in Flint, inside the water crisis. Good evening. We are so glad you're with us tonight as we come to you live from the campus of the University of Michigan in Flint along the banks of the Flint River.
In fact, the river is flowing behind us and it looks so harmless. But the river is the source of the water that's led to the life-altering crisis here in the city of Flint. Tonight, through the combined efforts of Help Me Hank, the Defenders, and the Local 4 News team, we'll show you how it all started, who the heroes are who uncovered it, and what's being done now to try to fix it.
We are also going to see how everyday people are living without easily accessible water. We're going to talk with parents about their fears, their worries, the uncertainty that they deal with every day, wondering whether the water that was tainted with lead in their homes will determine their child's development over years to come.
And you know, as a parent, and we both are, I can't imagine the enormity of having that kind of weight on your shoulders every day. But you know, every day there's something new on this crisis. And consumer investigator Hank Winchester has been here since the very beginning. We'll get things started off with him for a look at just where things stand right now. Good evening, Hank.
Carmen, Devin, good evening to both of you. We're inside one of the fire stations just up the road from both of you right now. Another busy day here, not only in Flint, but as you will see also in Lansing. This is the reality in Flint every day. Today is no different. If you want clean water, you make your way here to the fire station. Many in line telling me they're wondering when this will end.
It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah. Today, Governor Snyder in Lansing talking about the plan to fix this problem, and that includes removing some of the lead pipes in Flint.
We're still learning where all the pipes are and what are the biggest challenges. So part of the study is there's about 10,000 unknown pipes in particular we need to get the bottom of.
The NAACP wanting swift action, warning the governor that if a plan isn't moving forward in 30 days, a massive protest will get underway. The governor acknowledging work to develop a permanent fix is underway, and that includes an investigation into the Michigan Department of Health.
Again, there are challenges in that agency also, and that's something we are making a review of.
The first steps now being taken by the governor, he says, to identify pipes that could be a problem here in Flint. And the reason, well, obviously it's because the pipes are a danger, and that is why you see stacks and stacks of bottled water here behind me. This is what is sustaining the community and the people of Flint. Carmen, Devin.
All right, Hank, and of course we will hear more from Hank coming up, and we'll get back to him in just a few minutes. But first, what about this river behind us? How did this happen? How did the Flint River, which should have been a perfect source for water, turn toxic as it poured from thousands of faucets in this city?
Let's bring in Defender Karen Drew as she takes us back to the very beginning of all of this. Karen.
Carmen and Devin talking to families here in Flint. They say they remember how this started. It was dark water. It was water that caused their children's skin to itch. Insiders in city government telling us 10 years ago this idea was introduced to use the Flint River water, but it was shot down. And they couldn't believe what was then introduced and passed in the spring of 2014. It was back in April of 2014 when Flint switched from Detroit to the Flint River for its drinking water. The move was part of a cost-cutting measure. The city couldn't afford the $1 million monthly bill to Detroit, and under Flint's emergency manager, appointed by the governor, a decision was made. Money had to be saved. State officials told families the water was safe, but residents say once the switch was made, they could tell the difference.
So I've had water that was discolored, foamy.
And they keep giving us dirty crap that makes us sick. It hurts us.
Weeks later, alarming levels of lead were detected in the water.
So less than 2 weeks after the switch, they started failing the test, and they failed the next 3 quarterly tests, all in a row.
But Flint's public works director said Flint's water was passing all state testing.
We're confident the plan that we have going forward addresses the issue. We're bringing technical expertise, we're bringing resources to the table, and we'll stay at it until we get it right.
NBC News obtained an email from July where the governor's former chief of staff wrote to health officials, "These folks are scared and worried about health impacts, and they are basically getting blown off by us." There were assurances internally all was fine and that the public was being told to
anyone who is concerned about lead in the drinking water in Flint can relax.
Pediatrician Mona Hanna-Attisha launched an independent study and found lead levels in children had doubled since the water switch, and in some areas of town, tripled.
In 5 years, these kids are going to have problems with special education. They're going to have cognition problems.
A Virginia Tech research team said the water coming from the Flint River was 8 times more corrosive than Detroit water. These nails used to back their claims. The complaints continued.
The water is filthy.
In September, Flint's school superintendent announced students would no longer be drinking the water.
I'm taking control of the part of the day that I have control over, and that is the school day.
October 1st, the state declared a public health emergency, advising Flint residents to filter their water. Then officials started giving homeowners filters. October 8th, the state decided to return Flint to Detroit water.
We need to acknowledge that the DQ made some mistakes with respect to our protocol.
November 13th, a federal lawsuit is filed due to negligence of state and local officials, seeking compensation, a medical monitoring fund, and more oversight of Flint's water system.
They just disregarded the studies, they disregarded the experts, they disregarded the advice.
Then, December 29th, the governor apologizes in a statement, reading, "I want the Flint community to know how very sorry I am that this has happened, and I want all Michigan citizens to know that we will learn from this experience." The governor also accepted the resignation of the director of the MDEQ, Dan Wyatt.
One of the things we've always talked about is holding people accountable, and that shows that that's what's happening.
Water is a human right! Right, right, right!
Meantime, protesters grow louder and residents are still worried.
You don't trust it because you've been hearing so many different things from so many different people that's conflicting information, so it's like we still continue to buy the water.
And as for a future for these families?
Who's going to buy your house? Who would want to buy it?
We're tracking new developments in the Flint, Michigan toxic water crisis.
The water crisis in Flint continued to get national coverage. Filmmaker Michael Moore called for the governor's arrest. Then, January 5th, the governor declared a state of emergency, and the U.S. Attorney's Office announced it's helping the EPA with an investigation into Flint. A week later, the National Guard is called out, but only 7 guardsmen arrived to help. After much criticism, more members of the National Guard are called out to help deliver water to those in need. Next, the crisis expands to include Legionnaire's disease. Officials reveal a spike in cases as well as deaths after the city started using river water. January 15th, Attorney Bill Schuette announces he has opened an investigation into the Flint water crisis. January 16th, President Obama signs an emergency declaration and orders federal aid for Flint.
We will not stop working for the people of Flint.
Days later, during the governor's State of the State, he announced plans to provide $28 million in aid for Flint.
Here they are right here, a huge stack of emails.
The next day, the governor released his emails. Debate over who is to blame for the crisis continued. January 22nd, the day the governor returned executive powers to the mayor of Flint to appoint the city administrator and all department heads. Then, on the 2nd of February, the federal investigation into the Flint water crisis turns criminal in nature. The FBI joins in on the case.
If they're putting in the manpower and resources to investigate it, they have some reason to believe there's a potential violation.
The next day, the Flint water crisis takes center stage in the nation's capital as congressional hearings begin to find out who knew what, when. Only problem, Governor Snyder and Flint's former EM, Darnell Earley, are not there. Meantime, on February 9th, Flint's mayor introduces a $55 million plan to replace the residential pipes in the city.
All lead pipes in the city of Flint need to be replaced.
All the time, the families in Flint trying to make it through day by day with water they can't drink, too afraid to bathe in, and questions on when the water will be safe again. And it is a timeline that continues to change every single day. Political candidates descending onto this city, shining a spotlight. But as we said, the one question no one can answer, when will the water be safe? That's what everyone wants to know tonight. Carmen, Devin.
Oh, they certainly do,
Still.
Karen. And at what point during that timeline could they have made a better decision to go back to Detroit water? But lead isn't the only problem here. As Karen mentioned, there's been an increase in Legionnaire's cases here in Genesee County.
Now, researchers have been unable to confirm the link between the tainted water and the disease, but emails uncovered by the defenders show that as early as March of last year, a top Snyder appointee was alerted about the spike in Legionnaire's cases and the concerns that it might be linked to the water situation, and nothing was done. As of today, however, 9 deaths have been linked to the disease.
This 3-year-old boy became the face of Flint, but there are many more like him. From unexplained illness to repeat rashes. And those are just the problems you can see.
From taking a shower to making a cup of tea, for people in this city, every day is a struggle. We'll show you what daily life is really like for a Flint family.
That there is a Jim Jones in Michigan who gave a poison concoction to children and their families.
And strong words that many would agree are true. But who is that person responsible for the crisis? The investigation's next.
Got a real bad rash on my arm. I was drinking the water once I seen the mayor drinking, so I was drinking it.
The water is no good. The taste is bad.
I never thought this could happen in America in this day and age.
People have been complaining for this about 2 years now, and now it's all of a sudden they want to do something about it, and it's blame game.
Welcome back to Flint as we come to you tonight live, digging into the Flint water crisis. And that remains a very vexing question here. Who is to blame, and where are the mistakes that occurred? Were they criminal?
Well, let's get to the defender, Kevin Dietz. Kevin, there's a lot of finger pointing going on, but it doesn't appear that just one person can be held responsible.
No, there are several people being investigated in multiple agencies. Investigators are already going through documents and they're doing interviews. My sources tell me that it's not a matter of whether or not someone gets charged. It's who's going to get charged and what are they going to get charged with. Flint residents want answers.
Drink the water, Rick!
They want people held accountable. They believe laws were broken and those responsible should go to jail. 2 separate criminal investigations are underway. A federal investigation headed up by the FBI and a state investigation by the Attorney General.
My job as Attorney General is to enforce the law, and we're going to determine what laws may have been violated.
It won't be hard for investigators to find out who knew what and when. Emails and attachments contain dates, times, and names. They show communications between county, state, and federal health divisions, and in some cases, the governor's office. Local 4 legal experts say if your name is on an email, you're under investigation. If your name is on a discerning email, you better get an attorney.
But if they engage in some sort of activity, generate false documents or try to conceal it, then you get into an area where you may be able to articulate some violations of the mail fraud statute, the wire fraud statute.
Many will be getting a knock on the door from federal and state investigators who want to know why some emails suggest lead water contamination warnings were ignored for months.
If you engage or commit misconduct in office, that's a felony.
Other emails indicate high lead samples were thrown out of water studies, which resulted in federally mandated warnings to the community not taking place.
In here, where you're talking about a public safety issue, where you exclude 3 potentially material samples of water because you don't like the results, I think that's fraud, plain and simple.
Residents and the media are already questioning timelines given by the governor and state officials. Emails and memos are surfacing, raising doubts that everything possible was done as soon as possible. 9 people have died from Legionnaire's disease, which may turn out to be connected to the contaminated water supply.
We're here to investigate what possible crimes there are, from anything to the involuntary manslaughter or death that may have happened to some young person or older person because of this poisoning, to misconduct in office.
Local 4 legal experts have identified over a dozen laws that may have been violated, telling us investigators may offer plea deals to those willing to cooperate and become witnesses against higher-ranking officials. One thing is certain, investigators will look at everyone and everything.
This is the biggest case in the history of the state of Michigan, right? And that's what draws us to this, is to get these people their answers. As Todd said, these people are victims. That's who we represent.
Investigators tell me they are confident that they will get to the truth about what happened here in Flint and that prosecutors will hold those responsible accountable. One of the people who will be questioned by both the feds and the state investigators is Governor Rick Snyder. We sat down with the governor in a one-on-one interview to ask him the tough questions that you want answered. That is coming up in just a little bit. Carmen, Devin.
Yeah, Kevin, all these suits going forward, though, and investigations, this is tricky. It's very tricky to sue your government. You have to prove more, really, than just mistakes were made, right?
You do, but there are several laws that can be used here, and quite frankly, just delivering water that injures people is enough to charge people with crimes. So you're going to see people charged in this case.
So you don't have to prove that there was, in fact, a cover-up necessarily?
No, those would be separate charges, and they are looking at that. Any documents that may have been tampered with would indicate a cover-up, and those would be separate charges. But they can charge people just because of what happened, because of the misconduct in office, basically.
Who knew those laws were on the book?
All right, Kevin.
All right.
Well, for the residents of Flint, that is no doubt a concern. Who's to blame? But their time is more spent on the day-to-day of getting by and figuring out how you can get through with filters or whatever else, your bottled water, your temporary fixes.
Well, Hank is back with a look at what's being done to make the water coming out of the tap right now safe once again. Hank?
And Carmen, that's what it's all about, the solution. The governor has one plan, and today he talked about it in Lansing. In fact, his team just released an updated press release about his plan. The issue, though, the mayor of Flint, well, she has a completely different idea about how to solve this crisis.
We know the water is the problem. The question tonight, the question that remains, what is the solution? Unfortunately, it depends on which politician you're speaking with. Flint's mayor has made it clear to me that she wants these pipes removed now.
We are going to restore safe drinking water, one house at a time, one child at a time, until the lead pipes are gone.
The mayor's plan she calls the Fast Start Plan. It is a $55 million project that she says will solve the problem. The question, though, where to get the funding.
In order for Flint residents to once again have confidence and trust in the water coming from their faucets, all lead pipes in the city of Flint need to be replaced.
The governor has a different approach. He wants to wait and see, treat the water, continue doing aggressive testing, and see if the water levels become safe. Having said that, he has been working to funnel millions to Flint to deal with different infrastructure issues, at least $25 million for projects alone.
There's a path to work through this. Again, if you look at Professor Edwards and his recommendations, as you go through the process of recoding the lines, extensive scientific testing to say the water's safe out of the tap. The second step is to do a survey of the entire infrastructure.
Some lead experts worry that removing the pipes could actually make the situation worse. It is unclear what the real cost and timeline would be for a project. For many in Flint, knowing different leaders have different plans moving forward, it's been a source of frustration. Many just want to know how the problem is being resolved and if the water will be safe for them and their families.
And the governor saying that survey plan will begin very soon, taking a look and trying to identify which pipes that he believes should be removed. The mayor saying, though, listen, at the end of the day, the citizens of Flint, she believes they want all the pipes removed, that it's beyond testing for them. She says it's about the psychology of this situation every day and knowing that these pipes were the source of this problem. Carmen, Devin?
Can you blame them?
It's profound.
You would want fresh New pipes, too. Well, the calls are coming in from just about everywhere. Demands that the governor resign.
And tonight he is telling the defenders why he is not stepping down and why he doesn't believe that's the answer.
And a day in the life of a Flint family. They can't just turn on the faucet to brush their teeth or wash their face. We're going inside a home to experience their challenges. Next.
When a mom comes to see me, that anguish and that anxiety in her eyes is palpable.
And I'm watching them all the time. Are they smart enough still to do the things that they were just doing, or did the lead level cause their intelligence to fall off a little bit?
There are children here. There are children here.
Tonight, we've showed you how we've gotten here. The politics, the investigations. But we can't forget who this is all about. This is about families here in Flint.
Every day, people young and old have to deal with this that is now a reality in their lives. Let's get back to Defender Karen Drew with more on the way that they work their way through every single day, which can be a struggle here, Karen.
You know, Carmen and Devin, we spoke with so many families here in Flint, and there's so many different stories. It's about the mom who has to figure out how to bathe her baby, the parents who are trying to figure out how do they mix that baby formula and they don't have water to use. It's about the kids at school who can't use the water fountain, and it's about the seniors who have to take medicine every other hour and don't have water to take it with.
Then I open them, and I pour the water over in the kettle. Try to fill it up.
Maggie Young is a caretaker for Mr. and Mrs. Holly.
When they brush their teeth, wash their face, wash their hands, this is what I do. Every day, all day, is boil water.
The Hollies are in their 90s and need help in their home, from bathing, cooking, to taking their medicines 5 to 6 times a day. Life has been made drastically more difficult ever since this Flint water crisis.
I wash my face. My eye come and stinging and look, my eye was swollen so big. I went to the doctor. He said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "I wash my face."
So now Annie and her husband use bottled water. Well, when they can afford it.
With too much money, I'm a poor woman. Yeah. If I was rich, it'd be a different thing. That's for the rich people.
You know, it's a big burden, a real big burden.
Meantime, Maggie, the caretaker, tries to do her best for the Hollies, but it's hard.
Sometimes when I go down and I put a load of laundry in, you know, I have to wash them like again because they not getting clean like they supposed to with that water.
But honey, we just don't know until we get through with the law.
From the elderly to the toddlers, everyone is affected in this crisis. Across town, 25-year-old Anthony Thompson is busy making his kids oatmeal with bottled water.
You got to use water to cook with, you know what I'm saying? We run through like a case of water a day.
On this day, Anthony is watching his kids and some of his sister's children.
Actually, her youngest two have tested positive for lead poisoning. And recently, they've both been in and out of school due to the symptoms, the migraines. Mainly my niece Kanasia. She usually have these migraines, and the school calls me or my mom, and we got to go pick her up from school.
So Anthony is always keeping an extra eye on the kids, making sure they don't ingest the water.
Brush their teeth, especially when you got kids that love to brush their teeth. Like my son, he enjoys brushing his teeth. You got to use bottled water to rinse it off, to, you know, do everything. And now you got to monitor while they're in the tub, make sure that they're not drinking the water or ingesting the water.
Life is difficult and filled with worry for Anthony's family.
I wish that could be different, but, you know, it is what it is. That is my reality. But I usually always say if you can make it in Flint, you can make it in anywhere.
Is it good?
Something else to think about, we're talking about all this water that's been donated. Imagine you don't have a car. You can't drive and pick up the water. So many of these families have to use public transportation. So you're trying to hold your toddler, you're trying to carry this case of water, and it's just so darn difficult for them, even when people donate the water, for them to get it physically back to their house. Carmen and Devin, your heart really breaks when you actually see day to day what these families are living through.
No doubt about it, Karen. And in fact, for those where the kids have tested positive, even if we could snap our fingers tomorrow, replace all the pipes and put nothing but pure water through them, for those families, this story's a long way from being over.
Certainly is.
Yeah. All right, well, he's the leader of our state, but has he done enough?
People I talk to are having a hard time believing your answer. They want you investigated. They want you arrested.
Defender Kevin Dietz face-to-face with Governor Snyder, asking the questions you want answered.
For many families in Flint, life was already an uphill battle.
Well, it breaks my heart because they already have a struggle. Everything is a struggle for them already.
But they are also fighters.
Most of us, we're strong. We're going to get through this.
And they have a message for everyone watching from outside of the crisis. Next.
They are boys and girls, men and women. These are just some of the faces of Flint. In this photo taken by National Geographic magazine, siblings Julie, Antonio, and India Abraham have just picked up their daily allowance of bottled water from fire station number 3. And as I was just mentioning as we head into that last break, it is going to be years before we really know how the lead exposure is going to affect the thousands of children who live here in Flint.
It's unbelievable. Local 4 has teamed up with NBC to show you the true impact of this crisis and committing to following families as they deal with these challenges for months or years to come. Kimberly Gill introduces us to some of the faces of Flint.
Carmen and Devin, good evening. It's an issue that doctors say isn't going away anytime soon. We're talking about children who've been exposed to lead and the health issues that they could face for years to come. So tonight we introduce you to several families and we show you what they go through on a daily basis to protect their children.
Clean water. You do so much with water. You have to have it.
Tiana Langford has lived in Flint her entire life up until 2 months ago. That's when she moved out of the city to get her children away from the lead-poisoned water. She says she knew there was a problem months ago.
I noticed that the water was brown all the time, or that we were always getting rashes, and I don't know, it was like the water was just messing our skin up big time, you know.
Her 2 girls, Carlina and Amani, are 1 and 2 years old. Both were tested for lead, but only the youngest was found to have an elevated level.
I think that something would affect their development. I really don't even have words to describe how I feel about it.
Langford considers herself fortunate that she could pick up and move to nearby Flint Township. But others like Tiffany Davenport and her girls Brooklyn and Imani don't have that option. Without a car, she sometimes has trouble just getting the kids to their doctor's appointments.
You really don't know what tomorrow gonna bring, how it's gonna turn out, because I really don't. And I don't have nobody just say, come on, let's go get some water.
Davenport's children are 1 and 3. She says since drinking the water, she's noticed issues with their skin and bald spots in the girls' hair. For a while, she says the youngest was sick for reasons nobody understands.
And then she been throwing up. And then at first, when I took her to the doctor, they looked at me like I was crazy.
The family has since stopped using the tap water. For baths, they do wash-ups, and they use bottled water for everything else.
I've been using these to do my dishes because of yesterday I just found out I can't even boil this water. It's still not even no good.
On the other side of the city,
we go like every other day to get some water from the fire station.
Darlene Harden's family has similar issues with their hair and skin. Her 3-year-old daughter, Breeze, has a rash that keeps coming back.
You could clearly see that she had skin rashes, and she always complained about itching.
Her water levels tested low for lead, but she believes it continues to cause these stains in her toilet.
It has to be the water because she cleans it all the time. Yeah.
Though she cooks using bottled water, she says it's too cumbersome to bathe in it.
And it takes forever to fill the tub up. So we just have to do what we have to do and just pray on it and pray to God, you know, I don't know, we just pray on it.
She's still waiting on the results of her daughter's blood test.
My little helper.
But even though Tiana Langford knows her daughter has high lead levels, she says she doesn't know what to do next. She feels as if doctors and lawmakers aren't moving fast enough.
Everybody from Flint is not a lost cause. You know, some people really want to do something with their life. I'm one of them. My everything is my children. I've seen jokes about this, and when I hold my kids, it's no joke, it matters.
Nobody knows yet what the future will bring in terms of the children who've been impacted by this issue, but you can count on us here at Local 4 to keep you updated. We plan to follow these children's stories and bring you updates on how they've been impacted. Reporting in Flint, Kimberly Gill, now back to you.
You know, Tiana Langford, I saw your daughters in this piece that Kimberly did, and my heart just breaks for you, for all of the parents who are struggling with this. And we are now joined by some of the parents who are the faces of Flint in this water crisis. Chia Morgan, Laura McIntyre, Ashley Liddell Ruffin, and of course, Tiana Langford. We just want to say thank you so much for joining us. When did you know the water was toxic?
We didn't know exactly that it was lead in it, but going back to it's been over a year, closer to 2 years. You could smell it, you could see that.
Were you
it wasn't
drinking
clear.
it at the time?
Stopped drinking it, but still was bathing in it, cooking with it, but not directly inhaling it.
And Tiana, I see you're shaking your head.
About the same. I mean, it was basically when we were told about it, it was almost like a 24, 48-hour water advisory, kind of like when they tell you not to use your hoses. And that's about as lightly as it was put towards me.
You're all mothers, but you're all at different sort of places on this spectrum of experience that we've seen. Laura, your story's interesting because you actually never really drank much of the water because you were lucky enough to be one of the first ones tested by Virginia Tech.
That's correct. And we actually, I work with Naira Sharif and Claire McClinton in the Democracy Defense League, who have ties with the ACLU. And so from the very beginning, even before the switch to the water, we were aware that there might be potential problems and difficulties. And we've been fighting against the financial emergency manager for years before that. So we knew that that something was up. And when we demanded accountability, when we requested the FOIA requests, and they just refused to comply, that was it. I mean, we weren't even going to take a risk to drink the water from the beginning of the switch.
And Laura,
you could just see it.
Ashley, did you have the same experience?
Well, and actually, you're waiting for test results, if at last word that I heard, right?
That is correct. 2 weeks ago, my children and I went outside of the county limits to go have our blood work done. And just to go through that process and have my children and also myself retested, it was traumatic. My children had to get poked twice, and you know, it's one thing to take your children to go get shots, but it's one thing when now every time you go to the dentist, you go to the doctor, Mommy, do I have to get my blood work checked again? Mommy, are they going to poke my finger? My children went to the dentist the other day, and just out of normal conversation, oh, we're going to the dentist, but they hear doctor, and then they automatically go back to having to have their blood tested. So it's a traumatic experience. It goes beyond just not having clean water and not being able to establish what should be a norm, but it has changed our entire lifestyle.
Who do you blame?
I blame our governor because he can say that the emergency manager made the official decision, but there's not a move that I make in a day that my boss is not aware of. So ultimately there was some lack of accountability going on there. So he's to blame fully for not having control of everything.
He wants to replace some of the pipes, or at least identify the lead pipes and just replace those. You satisfied with that?
No, I'm not even sure he's doing that. I don't know exactly what's being done at this point.
Well, he said today that they need to prioritize which pipes need to be traded out. I think a lot of people are confused because it's a very connected system. I don't know how you only change part of it, but everybody that we've talked to in Flint so far today seems to believe that the only answer is all new pipes. Are you willing to settle for this idea that some pipes can be recoated on the inside, or is that not an answer?
No.
And when will you trust anybody who tells you that they've got your best interests in mind to begin with?
If the pipes can be recoated, that throws out one of the major issues. You know, if you can just recoat them and everything be all right, why even switch back? You know what I mean?
There you go.
How will there be a new normal for you? When will life ever be the way that it once was?
I don't think there will ever be a normal because of the way that this crisis was introduced to us. Like she said, it started back in the summer of 2014 with 24 to 48 boil advisories and water advisories, and there were water main breaks. So I don't think that we'll ever fully be able to trust the government. We may never be able to turn on a fountain again and really feel that we're getting clean water.
I hate to boil this down to something like real estate and money values of homes, but you moved, correct? You moved to Flint Township to get away from the water. The rest of them, I'm curious as to what you feel like this has done to your your own personal wealth, the value that you poured into your homes, your assets.
Well, even with the move, you're still afraid to touch the water. No matter where you're going, it's branded into your mind. You're afraid to touch it. No matter where you go, you're going to have that in the back of your mind, being afraid to drink out of the tap.
So what's the solution?
Well, the pipes need to be replaced. I mean, have you seen some of the pipes? I mean, decoding the inside of those pipes. And Scott Smith from the Water Defense, who is working with Mark Ruffalo's group, is saying that we're not even getting our water tested correctly or accurately, and we're only testing for lead. There's many other things that are in the water that are just as dangerous, if not more so, that also need to be accounted for. So it's not just lead. The pipes need to be replaced.
So if the governor is watching, what do you have to say to the governor?
I need for him to understand that I'm not going to give up. I understand that some families will have to make the decision where it works best for them, if they need to move, if they need to relocate. But for as long as my family can tolerate it, this is home. This has been home for almost 3 generations. My grandparents are here. I was raised and brought up in this community, and I have strong roots here. And you know, my children are of age where this is home for them. This is their comfort zone, and I'm just at the point where I'm not ready to leave my home. I'm not ready to give up the fight. There are too many different religious organizations and churches and groups that have really, you know, decided to pull together and making neighbors and building friendships and partnerships with all over the city. And it's like, if everybody picks up and moves because of this issue that is beyond our control, then that's basically us giving up. And I don't think Flint is a city that's full of people that are giving up.
They don't look like they're going to give up.
Our city is strong, and we're going to continue to fight this, and we're going to fight it in the best way that we know how. We're going to try to remain positive about it, because at the end of the day, when we all go home, we're still boiling water. We're still using bottled water. Well, I'm sorry, not boiling water, because we've been advised not to do that. But, you know, we're still using...
We did have to boil the filtered water.
So you're right.
And you're not giving up?
No, we're not. No, we're not giving up. I said, I made a statement and I stick to it. If there's anything that can drive me from Flint, it will be the water crisis. But I didn't say it was going to drive me from Flint. This is my home, so.
And in terms of the governor, he needs to resign, and criminal charges need to be, he needs to be pressed with criminal charges. There needs to be a Department of Justice investigation. And he needs to release his emails, and without any redacted statements. I'd like to see exactly what is going on with the Karagandhi Water Board and the Water Authority, because right now there's things coming out that are linking this water situation to the fracking industry. I want to see what his connections with Nestle are. This goes deep, and I want him to be held accountable
and you know
for all of his decisions.
Laura, we could talk about this probably for another hour. We want to thank you, each of you, for taking the time and sharing your stories with us, and God bless you and good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Well, there have been calls nationally, even here tonight, for the governor to resign because of how he's handled this crisis. Now, some argue that if this had been a richer, maybe whiter community, this never would have happened.
Let's go back to Defender Kevin Dietz, who sat down with the governor, looking for answers to those questions and more. Kevin?
The governor was gracious enough to sit down with us and answer our questions. When we talked about the future, he was direct and straightforward. But when we talked about how this could happen to the poorest children in the state, he was evasive. If the people are walking out of their $1 million homes in Grosse Pointe in Birmingham with brown jugs of water that smells bad and they're scared, are you going to do the exact same thing as you did in Flint?
Well, again, this wasn't about the fact that Flint's a poorer community. Actually, we've done a lot of good things to help the people of Flint that I'm proud of. We just need to do more, particularly given the circumstance.
It's that image of rich people coming out with brown water saying this is dirty. I'm talking pre-lead. This is just dirty, bad water. You don't think it would have gone any differently?
Again, I worked hard to take care of the citizens of the state.
You talk about recoating of pipes. You know, if I lived in Flint and you told me my pipes were recoated, I would still be scared. I'd still be nervous. And I don't know how anyone can ever sell a house unless they can say, we have new pipes here.
Well, a couple things. One is the science, both independent and government experts believe they can be recoated. And that's the case that currently goes on. There are lead pipes all over this country that essentially have this coating on it.
There seems to be a small push of people who say the media has just completely blown this thing out of proportion, that they're just going way over the top. Are you seeing any of that, or is this overall necessary until we find out what's really going on?
Well, again, this is a serious issue. There clearly is a concern and a problem with too much lead that was getting in the system in Flint in terms of not coming in from the source, but because of the coating on these pipes getting eroded. And so we need to get that corrected by getting them recoated and eventually getting good water coming out of the tap. So I think it was very critical to say don't drink the water. Here are bottled water, here are filters, here are solutions in the short term. Longer term, let's get the third-party testing to come in and say it's safe. Let's look at longer-term care for anyone with higher levels. Let's look at how to help the city of Flint recover from all this in terms of economic development and other actions. Let's do lessons learned. Let's make sure this never happens anywhere in Michigan again. So there's a whole series of things that clearly are appropriate given this happened, and I wish it never would have happened. It did. Let's step up and deal with the situation by addressing the damage as best as possible.
Are you hopeful that this will take place in a month, a year, 2 years, 5 years, longer than that?
Well, again, I hope it's shorter rather than longer. Obviously, as a practical matter, I'm not going to put a date on that. That wouldn't be right. It's not about how fast or how long it takes. It's about making sure it's safe.
What would you tell the people of Flint you're specifically sorry for?
Well, there are a number of individuals that work for me that made mistakes in this process that contributed to not seeing the corrosive controls go in the water that common sense said they should have. And when people make mistakes that work for you, you're responsible. And you have to do everything right to improve it. The other thing is we went through this, there are opportunities that I wish I could have done things faster and better when you look at it in retrospect. I mean, you always want to say, how do you deal with something like this? Because people have been harmed. Trust in government has been violated in some fashion. And so this is awful. And the only thing that's worse is recognizing that people of Flint have it worse than how I even feel about it. I mean, they're the ones that are having to address the issue of, you know, not being able to just turn on their tap and use the water.
People out there are saying they want you investigated, they want you arrested. Is it fair for people to keep saying these kinds of things?
Well, again, it's gone beyond that. People want to have me shot. Well, I mean, it's true. So, again, that doesn't help solve the problem. So I just have to deal with all that. I have to live with it. And I'm going to keep my focus on solving the problem.
The governor says he's going to let investigators look at the past and figure out who exactly is to blame and who should be charged criminally. He's going to stay focused on the future, trying to get safe drinking water to every resident of Flint as quickly as possible. Carmen, Devin.
All right, well, we know that this story is not just local, not just a Michigan story. This is a national story. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow was one of the first members of the national media to shine a light on the serious situation here unfolding in Flint.
Let's get back to Hank Winchester. Hank, before Maddow, much of the country had no idea what was going on here.
And that is true, Carmen and Devin. I mean, when you talk about breaking this story wide open nationally, the credit does go to Maddow. I mean, she was talking about this last year when the national media was not even mentioning Flint. I'm happy to tell you that tonight, Rachel Maddow joining us live from her studios at MSNBC. Rachel, thank you for taking the time tonight.
Hank, I'm super happy that you guys are doing this show tonight. It's been incredible, and it's a real honor to be with you tonight. Thanks a lot.
You know, we had an opportunity, Rachel, to talk when you were here for the town hall, which was really a great opportunity to bring people together. I'm curious to know, once you left and made your way back home, were there particular images, were there interviews, were there interactions with people that really stuck with you after you left Flint?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, obviously there's stuff that I saw in Flint and things that I learned there and people who I talked to that drove additional reporting, particularly on some really, gritty, granular questions about replacing lead pipes in Flint and things like that. Some of what informed our later reporting on that story, just since I've been back at home, was stuff that I learned on the ground there. But I think the thing that stuck with me most as a person was just standing in a living room in a family's house in Flint and learning from them for the first time after we've been talking for a while that they had had one door-to-door visit since this crisis happened in Flint. It'd been almost 2 years that they've been living with this. They'd had one door-to-door visit where somebody came by and dropped them off some water. And I realized, wow, at the national level, we've been reporting that door-to-door water delivery started in Flint. What we missed is the fact that it happened once and then it stopped. And it was for show, and it wasn't to actually fix the problem. And realizing that, seeing that in terms of its day-to-day impact on these folks' lives, it just, I can still barely process it, but it affected me pretty deeply.
Yeah, the images here, the sights, the sounds of Flint, it's really overwhelming to tell. Rachel, I apologize, we're a little short on time tonight. I thank you so much for your time this evening. I know you'll be keeping a close eye on the debate here in Flint, and we hope to see you back here in town very soon.
Absolutely. Great. You're doing great work on this, Hank. Thank you.
Thank you. And Carmen and Devin, I mean, Rachel Maddow really, again, is the first national reporter to talk about what was happening here in Flint. And her work, moving this story forward has been so critical to letting the nation know what is happening here.
That's right, and she's not going to stop now anytime soon. All right, thank you, Hank. We will be right back with our Flint water crisis special right after this.
We really do need the water.
We put out the call, and you responded. Help Me Hank and Local 4 teamed up with Art Van and Catholic Charities, asking you, our viewers, to donate water to Flint. And boy, did you step up. Each week, at least 10 trucks full of water arrive in Flint, and the water gets handed out to families in need. And we're not done yet. You can still donate at any Art Van location in Metro Detroit.
Art Van has more than 40 stores throughout the state of Michigan and obviously in Flint. And one of the tenets that Mr. Van established some 56 years ago was to support the communities in which we serve. And this is one way we can serve the Flint community.
You know, the response to the need here has just been amazing since the effort started. More than 1 million bottles of water have been donated, and you've been so generous, and you keep asking, how can you help in other ways? Well, guess what? We are taking our efforts to the next level.
Water will always be important, of course, but we also want to focus on the long-term needs in Flint, specifically the children. So Local 4 and Art Van are working on a new effort that is going to do just that. We're going to share more about it in the coming weeks, but stay tuned. All right, let's get back to our consumer investigator, Hank Winchester. He's been pretty much taking up residence since all of this started. He's been talking with people, been demanding answers from the officials involved here, including the governor. Also been looking at the solutions that are going to be needed here long term.
Well, needless to say, he's seen a wide range of emotions, but most importantly, there's a sense of hope. We've felt it a little bit here when we talked to the mothers. They're not going to give up. Hank?
It's hard to believe this is happening in an American city.
Any filters?
I think they're out of filters.
People standing in long lines waiting for something that we all need to survive: clean water.
Everybody's having a bottle of water. I mean, that's our source of water. You don't want to bathe in it.
It's been heartbreaking witnessing the struggles and seeing the people who are being affected by this real crisis. I will never forget the lead testing event. Hundreds of scared children, like 5-year-old Morgan. I will never forget all the families who let us into their homes. This house, located on a street with some of the highest lead levels in the city.
I've been thinking about moving, but can't right now.
I will never forget the countless people who shared their stories with me as they stood in long lines on cold days, waiting for that bottled water.
It's getting harder every day because I got a child.
It was because of your stories and your struggle that we went searching for help and for answers, starting at the top with Governor Snyder.
At what point do things change? Why isn't FEMA out here right now with trucks handing out water to people that need it?
Well, again, I think you're going to find the fire stations hopefully do have water in filters.
We don't today.
We started ramping up.
But it's not working. There's no water right now at the fire station on Atherton Road. There's no filters. So whatever you've been doing is not working.
We met with Flint's mayor.
No, we can't drink the water yet. And that's why we're still, we wanted this emergency.
We sat down and questioned Michigan's Attorney General and his team leading this investigation forward.
No one's off limits. If you violated the law, I'm going to prosecute you.
And I met with those working on solutions and raising awareness like Dr. Mona, Aaron Brockovich, Flint native Michael Moore, Rachel Maddow, Chelsea Clinton, Dr. Nicole Laurie, part of the president's team, Jesse Jackson, and many others. They've helped give this story more national attention. But it's you, the people of Flint, who first raised the red flag, who demanded answers, and who will always hold a special place in my heart.
Again, it's all about the people of Flint. We wouldn't be able to tell these stories without their support, and we are so thankful that so many have been willing to share their struggles. Carmen, Devin?
Yeah, so right, Hank, and we are now going to continue the conversation over on our website. Head to clickondetroit.com. Our special webcast on Flint starts right now.
That's right, and we're going to say good night, goodbye, and we will see you at 11.